The Lake family lives in their beachfront house. Every year, they have a New Year's Eve party with their family and friends. At this year's party, Tim feels awkward and walks around with his friend Jay. When the countdown to the new year begins, Polly, the girl he was dancing with, leans in to kiss him. But Tim ends up shaking her hand, leaving Holly disappointed. The next day, Tim wakes up feeling embarrassed and hungover. He is summoned to his father's office, James. James reveals a secret to Tim that he has never shared with anyone before. He tells Tim that the men in their family, including Tim, have the ability to travel back in time, but only within their own lifetime. To do so, they must go to a dark place and focus on their destination. Tim can't believe it and thinks his father is joking. To prove his father wrong, Tim steps into the closet and thinks about the New Year's Eve party from the previous night. After a few seconds, Tim steps out of the closet and is shocked to see himself wearing the attire from the New Year's Eve party. He kisses Polly, who reacts strangely. Tim realizes that time travel is real. He listens to his father's experiences about this ability and learns that it's the reason why James seems to have so much time for them. Tim decides that he will use it to find his true love. One day, Kit Kat invites her boyfriend's cousin, Charlotte, to stay over. As the family lounges in the sun with their guest, Tim hopes to impress Charlotte and see her good side. Tim agrees to apply sunscreen on Charlotte's back but ends up accidentally spilling the entire bottle on her. Wanting to make a good impression, Tim travels back in time and acts more relaxed and careful about the situation. Throughout the summer, Tim tries to express his feelings to Charlotte but always fails. Until finally, it's the last day of Charlotte's stay at their house. Tim hopes to confess his feelings to her the night before she leaves, but he gets rejected. Unaware that Kit Kat has already informed Charlotte about Tim's intentions, Charlotte feels regretful, wondering if everything would have been different if she had spoken to him earlier. With that thought in mind, Tim decides to travel back in time once again and confess to Charlotte amidst the summer season. However, this time Charlotte instructs him to ask again on the last night of her stay at their home. This reaffirms that Tim doesn't stand a chance with Charlotte, no matter what he does. Eventually, Tim gives up on pursuing Charlotte. After Charlotte's departure, Tim hopes to start a new chapter in his life. He heads to the city to pursue his career as a lawyer. When Jay takes Tim to a restaurant where guests dine in complete darkness, Tim sits next to Mary and her friend, Joanna. In the darkness, Tim and Mary get to know each other and share moments of joy. After dinner, Tim and Jay meet Mary and Joanna in person. Tim is captivated by Mary, and there is clearly a spark between them. Before parting ways, Mary gives Tim her phone number. Tim returns home joyfully, but is met with Harry's anger as he is furious about the opening night of the play being ruined by the lead actor forgetting his lines. Wanting to help, Tim travels back in time and joins Harry at the theater before the opening night. He convinces the lead actor to rehearse his lines, and it works. However, another actor then forgets their lines. Tim goes back in time again and assists that actor as well. The play is a success, but when Tim checks his phone, he realizes that Mary's number is missing. His journey to the past has erased his beautiful memories with Mary. After feeling hopeless, Tim joined Harry for breakfast. Harry showed him a newspaper article about Kate Moss' exhibition in town. Mary, who is a fan of Kate Moss, convinced Tim to spend the week at the exhibition in hopes of meeting Mary. However, the interaction between Tim and Mary didn't go smoothly when Tim found out that Mary now has a boyfriend at Joanna's party. Tim tried to prevent it from happening by going back in time and taking Mary away from the party before her potential boyfriend arrived. Despite being hesitant at first, Mary felt a strong pull towards Tim and eventually left the party with him. As they left, they crossed paths with a man, unknowingly walking past her future boyfriend. During a fun dinner, they got to know each other better. After that, Tim walked Mary home and she invited him to her apartment. They grew closer and went to the bedroom. However, Tim stumbled over Mary's shoes and struggled to unclasp her bra, making their first night together a bit awkward. Tim decided to go back in time and give it another try. This time, he managed to avoid Mary's shoes and quickly removed their clothes. Everything went more smoothly, and they spent a perfect first night together. A few months later, Tim and Mary's relationship grew stronger, and they eventually moved in together. One day, Tim ran into Charlotte at the theater with his coworker. The conversation started off a bit awkward, but Charlotte initiated a conversation and invited Tim to have dinner. During dinner, Charlotte expressed her regrets for rejecting Tim in the past. She attempted to invite him into her apartment, but Tim declined. Rejecting his first love helped Tim realize the depth of his feelings for Mary. Without hesitation, Tim rushed home and proposed to Mary. Although his first proposal didn't go as planned, Tim did it again and eventually, Mary accepted his proposal. During the summer, Tim brought Mary home to meet his parents. Mary quickly bonded with Tim's mother, while Tim spent quality time with his father. Kit Kat also joined them at home after going through a tough time in London. The Lake family was overjoyed with Tim and Mary's wedding and Mary's pregnancy. Despite the storm hitting and the wedding tent getting destroyed, they celebrated with laughter and romance. Tim went back in time to fix mistakes in his wedding speech and chose his father as his best man. Several months later, Mary gave birth to their daughter, Posey. Tim was completely enchanted by the experience of raising a child, both in cherishing precious moments and facing the challenges that came along. They later moved to a new home and celebrated Posey's first birthday with all the guests, including Harry and Rory. However, Kit Kat arrived late to the party. The doorbell rang and Tim opened it, but instead of Kit Kat, it was Jimmy, her troublesome boyfriend. Kit Kat and Jimmy had been arguing earlier, and Kit Kat drove to Tim's house while intoxicated. She ended up crashing her car on the way. Tim went back in time to help Kit Kat, but her drinking problems stemming from her unhappy relationship with Jimmy remained. Tim talked to Kit Kat and tried to help, but failed. He then took Kit Kat back to the past during a New Year's Eve party, where he met Jimmy. This time, instead of teasing Jimmy, Kit Kat unleashed her anger and punched him. After returning to the present, Kit Kat realized her feelings for Jay and started dating him. Their relationship was happier and healthier compared to her relationship with Jimmy. Meanwhile, Tim went back home and discovered that he had a son, instead of his daughter, Posey. He realized that the changes he made in the past had altered the present. When Tim meets James, he explains that any changes he makes before his son is born could potentially result in a different child. If Tim wants to keep Posey, he can't alter anything that happened before her birth. Unable to bear the loss of his daughter, Tim goes back to the past to undo the changes he made in Kit Kat's life, allowing the car accident to occur. With Kit Kat in the hospital, Tim and Mary stay by her side until she recovers. Their support inspires Kit Kat to transform her life for the better. After reminiscing about the alternate timeline where Kit Kat is happy with Jay, Tim suggests that Kit Kat starts dating him. After returning from the hospital, Tim relishes in the presence of his daughter, Posey. Their happiness inspires Tim to desire another child. Though initially hesitant, Mary agrees, and they have a son 2 years later. One evening, Tim helps Mary prepare for a meeting with the best-selling author at her company, but they accidentally leave Posey downstairs, where she ends up destroying the manuscript from Mary's office. Tim wants to use time travel to fix it, but their night is disrupted by a phone call from his mother, announcing that James has been diagnosed with late-stage cancer. Tim, Mary, and Kit Kat visit a beach house, where Tim has a heartfelt conversation with his father. They come to the realization that their time travel adventures cannot cure James's cancer without jeopardizing the births of Tim and Kit Kat. In the end, they come to understand that time travel cannot fix everything that has happened in their lives. James gave Tim 2 important lessons: living a normal everyday life and appreciating the beauty of the world. After experiencing that kind of life once, Tim decided to enjoy both ordinary and special moments in his life. However, there are days when he doesn't want to live again, like when his father passed away. Not ready to say goodbye, Tim goes back to the past to visit his father when he was still healthy. After James' death, Tim found comfort in being able to visit his father in the past whenever he missed him. However, Mary wanted to have a third child. Tim hesitated because having a third child would hinder his journeys to the past. After careful consideration, Tim let go of the past and decided to focus on the future. He agreed to have another child. A few months later, Mary became heavily pregnant and gave birth soon after. This was Tim's last opportunity to visit his father in the past. He returned to the past and played table tennis with his father for the last time. Seeing the sadness in Tim's eyes, James realized that this was their final time together. He accepted it and reassured Tim that he agreed with his decision. As a gift, they both traveled back to a time when Tim was little, when James was healthy and full of energy. James and Tim ran and played on the beach for the last time. Tim bid his final farewell to his father and returned to the present when his third child was born. Years passed by, and Tim continued living a normal life, enjoying laughter and tears with his family. Meanwhile, Kit Kat also gave birth to her child with Jay. One morning, Tim let Mary sleep and prepared breakfast for their children. Enjoying their presence, Tim decided never to time travel again. He chose to live each day as if it were the second time he's living his life. This time, he focused on appreciating life, from big events to the smallest details.